Hi, my name's Jamie, aka Squirrel, and welcome to my coverage of the NAFL draft. The NAFL is a front office football multiplayer league, and today I'm going to be doing a first round mock draft to the first 32 picks for the next draft in that league. Before I get into it, a big thanks to my mate Johnny, aka Johnny Shaka. Hey Johnny, he got in touch with me the other day, saw I did a video for a different league. And we go back to a league I used to play in called the GML, which I think Johnny still plays in. He used to beat me up there time after time, and so I think he just thought he'd throw me a bone by asking me to do this. The pride of Canada, Canada's #1 front office football multiplayer guy. Good to hear from you, Johnny. And let's get into this. This is going to be good fun. I did some videos for another league called the Red Zone Blitz, and that was a bit of a long, rambling video. This is going to be quicker. Because this time I've had a good look at the board before doing this video, and let's see how quickly I can get these picks done. That's the plan. And in front of you, you can see on the board here, this is my board. So I've had a look at all the players. These are the player names here in the middle. Oops. And you can see the player names and some data about all the players, and we're going to look at them. What we got at the moment, this board is graded here by the projected maximum current rating you can get if you do a simple multiplication of the bars that the scouts see, or that Johnny's scouts see, because this is all based on Johnny's scouting. But there's quite a lot more to it than that, as all experienced multiplayer or any front office football player will know. And so I'm going to take you through the way I would think about this if I was doing this draft, how I would take these players. And this is a mock, so we're going to do it team by team. As you can see at the moment, we've got San Diego on the clock, and if you look at the order for this league, this is the order. We've got some player needs here, which is based on the game. I know the game gives you some fairly ropey sometimes player needs, but we're just going to work on the basis that they're roughly sensible. And then I can see there's a bunch of guys I know in this league, so hello to the guys I know. Let's get going with this. So what I've done here, we've got the maximum projected rating here, and you can see that, but what's probably a little bit more, it's going to speed me up anyway, is I've been through and I've graded a bunch of these guys out by hand. And what I will say is this is a good draft class, right? So if you sort this, let's just do it like this. This is my grades. One's meant to be a true top first round pick. 2 down here is a second round pick, and then I've got these kind of gradients here just to tell me whether I think it's a top of the first, middle of the first, bottom of the first player, which hopefully is going to make it quicker for me to go through and look at these guys. I've got, and I did this just before we started, I think I've got 31, have I got? Yeah, 31, you see it down here. 31 first round grades, which sounds pretty normal, right? 31 first round grades, there are 32 first round picks, isn't that just normal? Not really, because I'm a pretty harsh grader, particularly at the top end. There are not many players that I like to use a first round pick on. I have got a pretty restrictive view on positional value and what kind of players I think you should take in the first round. And specifically, what I mean by that is I think you should take players that affect the passing game with a first round pick. But there's loads of them in this draft. This is a stacked draft, so we're going to get right into it. So we've got San Diego on the clock here, and according to the stuff I've been sent anyway, their needs, it says inside linebacker, quarterback and wide receiver, and you can safely say that the first pick of the first round of the draft, the 1-1 pick, we are not going to be picking an inside linebacker. So these guys, I think they're going to be looking at a quarterback and a wide receiver, and I take it that there are, my view anyway, is that there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 totally blue chip elite prospects in this draft, and this is who they are. And so I think that with the 1-1 pick, we're looking at these, and as I say, it's the first pick in the draft, so I think we can wave goodbye to the defensive guys, and really we're looking at the quarterbacks and the wide receivers here. We've got a quarterback, this guy called Terry. He's the only quarterback that I view as elite in this draft, and then we've got a couple of wide receivers. Let's just work on the basis that if you need a quarterback and a wide receiver, you tend to say we'll take a quarterback. Sometimes that can be different depending on the quality of the prospects. And let's just narrowly focus on the quarterback position for a minute. So according to me anyway, we've got 2 quarterbacks that you would consider with a first round pick. You've got Clifton Terry and then another guy called Ed Brady. And there's a clear difference in those two. They both look like players that I would consider drafting and drafting quite high. But Terry has got a projected rating in the 70s, maybe even towards the 80s. And that's what this is telling you here, this column here of this spreadsheet. And there's going to be a lot of spreadsheets in this video, by the way, make no apologies for that. And then, there are a lot of good things to think about Terry. So he's the obvious pick. And then if we go and look at the wide receivers, again, this is a stacked class. There's loads of receivers, and we like a couple of them. You've got this guy Segura, and you've got this guy Fierro. So if I'm San Diego, realistically, I'm going to limit my thinking to those three, and that's how we're going to get started with this mock. We're going to look at these three, and I'm basically working on the basis that whoever doesn't pick from these three first should probably think about doing it with picks 2 and pick 3, because the positional value of wide receivers and quarterbacks in this game is so great that it's hard to believe really that someone would look to a different position if there's an elite prospect. And not even that, you would even consider players in those positions above elite prospects in other positions. Let's think about that as we get further down the mock. So I'm looking at Terry first, and then I'm going to look at Segura, and I'm going to look at Fierro. So Clifton Terry, quarterback, wide receiver Ellis, Segura, and wide receiver Victor Fierro is the top 3 picks likely in this draft. And we're going to kick off with Terry. So if we take Terry's ID and we put it into this thing, what this thing is doing is it takes a player and it tries to look in a database of previous players to find players who are similar to this one and see what happened to them. Because as all players with experience in front office football will know, what you see in the scout process as a scout prospect isn't necessarily what you're going to get. There's randomness, but there's also lots and lots and lots of patterns. And what this is trying to do is just try to discern some of those patterns and maybe try and see through them a little bit and give a bit of a sense for the odds of something working out or not working out. So if you've got Terry, and what we've done is we've put Terry in up here. Here's Terry. Terry, according to a multiplication of the bars through the weightings, is something like I've got 79, something like a 70s rated quarterback on the face of it. Here's a bunch of the combines, and I'm just going to fix this. And sorry, I should have done this before we started the video. All right, so here's the combines here for Terry and a bunch of other players. I reweight them onto a 0 to 100 scale, which I think is a relevant thing to do. You've then got, these are then down here, oops. You've then got a bunch of old players down here, and then you've got all their characteristics. So this is what the maximum rating turned out to actually be for the players. This is what the projection was. So the same as this number 79, what the projection was for those players at the time. And then this is the delta, so the difference between the two. And what you can do when you look at this is say, well, this guy, Clifton Terry, had a 79, and these guys had all these ones too. But actually what happened to them was some of them busted out. Players like this, who was expected to be a 64 and turned out to be a 7. Classic bust. So we've got Terry here, and let's have a look at him. And what I like to do when I'm playing this game, I like to look across the bars and the combines and see if there's anything really distinctive, or I look in particular at what's called the static bars in front office football, which are the bars with unusually high correlations. And one of the reasons why Terry is such a good prospect, among others, is he's got a very high sense rush bars. Here we are, we look over here, 86 is very high, it's out of 100. And so what I'll do is I'll just compare him to other players with a sense rush of say over 75. And if you do that, what you'll find is that with one exception here, this guy who is a massive bust, don't know what happened there, what you end up with players that look and feel a bit like this guy Terry is they start off with high projections and they turn out to be great. This guy was a similar projection, 86. This guy 84, 83, 70, 82, and those are the 6 most similar players in this database, all massive ratings, with the one exception, which is this guy busted out, very unlucky, whoever picked that guy. And then they've got a lot of players with high ratings. Now, high ratings doesn't mean they're good, and particularly of quarterbacks, because there's this hidden rating called avoid interceptions, which you don't, I think, know much about in the draft. If anything, I can't find anything that gives me a sense for it. But that high sense rush is great. And then also this guy's got a very high accuracy bar, which for me, the way I play the game, your mileage may vary, but I look for the accuracy bar as well. I think it's important. So you look at those two and you think, well, that looks good. And if you, in fact, why don't I just do this? If I take players that have got high accuracy as well as high sense rush, and then so narrow it down to just that, and then I say give me the players, you only get 4, and I bet you they're all good. So if you go across this blue bar at the top, this is what they look like as prospects, and we go over to the grey bar over here, this is what they were as actual players. Accuracy 80, 100, 100 and 87, and the sense rush high tier. This guy, if he doesn't throw picks, this guy's going to be a top tier quarterback prospect. And even for me, and I like wide receivers in this game a lot, I think I would say that even with receivers on the board, I don't need to look at them. This guy is the #1 pick in the draft, and I think San Diego should take quarterback Terry. There he is. I mean, there's some minuses. He's got a low percentage developed. That's not normally good, but if you look at his birth year, he's a young prospect too. So there's normally a relationship between this percentage and the year. It could be that that's unhelpful, but I wouldn't be that fussed. I'd take the opportunity. If he came out with a high future and a low current rating, I would start him from day one. And if you had a bad season while the guy learned and you were at the top of the draft next year and you were able to take a wide receiver, that's no problem as far as I'm concerned. So there's Clifton Terry, and that's, I think, a really good start in this mock draft. Now we've got on the clock Cincinnati. Cincinnati, again, this game loves getting the player needs into a slightly silly place. I am fairly certain that if you're picking 2 in the draft, unless you've done a magnificently good trade, that your best #1 need or #2 need it's not going to be an inside linebacker and it's not going to be a fullback. You want probably wide receivers and maybe you want a quarterback too. Let's look at these 2 receivers. We've got Segura and we've got Fierro. And what I'm about to say is probably going to be a little controversial, but I'm going to say it anyways. I looked at this before I started this video, and I quite like Segura, but I think I like Fierro more. Let's have a look and see why. Here's Segura. His birth year is in the middle of the pack, but his development's low, so that's a bad ratio. Don't like that ratio. His combines are fantastic. He's got a max static, and he's got a really high expected rating. Let's have a look what that does. So here we are. Again, we'll just bring a load of similar players up. So now we've got a load of wide receivers and they've got, they'll have high ratings because they look like this guy, and this guy's an elite prospect. So big play, which is the static here. We're going to do Grayson. When I say static, by the way, I'm talking about bars. And let me just cover this because this came up in FOFC, the forum, this week, actually. When I talk about statics, what I mean is, if we go over here, there's a bunch of numbers at the top here, and they're coloured in. These are correlations. If you take a big population of prospects and then take those prospects and compare them to actual players that the prospects turn into, these are the correlations between, I've just coloured them in here, between the bar as a prospect and the bar as a player. And this one you'll see has got a super high correlation, 0.966. 1 is a perfect correlation, -1 is a perfectly inverse correlation, 0 is no correlation at all. So 0.966 is massively high. I mean, they're all quite high actually. Wide receivers is sort of relatively, that's a different discussion. But 0.966 is high. Tells you that if you've got a player with high big play as a prospect, they've probably got it as a player. And I think this is a long story as well, but I think it tells you other things about what might happen. Generally speaking, high statics are good. This guy's got a super high one. Let's limit the population here. I think I did that to players with a high static, and then search again. And then what you'll find if you look at this is that they tend to mirror their projections pretty closely, which is commonplace for players with very high statics and elite combines and bars. Now, the problem with Segura is, whilst that's all fantastic, the other bars that I really value are downfield and route running, so here and here. And they're in the 70s, high 60s, low 70s. That's not elite. You want 80, 90 for a guy who's an all-round superstar, mega prospect, kind of guy that you would take with a second pick in the draft. That's a bit of a minus. And I think that is the reason why I would be a little bit down on this guy. Let's just see if there's enough guys in the sample to make this a worthwhile exercise. If I do downfield and just say minus and +5, so what's that, 67 to 77. And then route running, I'm not going to get many comps for this, and it's probably not a very good exercise, but let's do it anyway. 63 and 73. I'm literally down to, I've only got one player, so there's not enough sample here for this to be any good. But here's a guy that looks very similar to Segura. He had a 71 projection, came out as a 74. He's got not as good combines, but they're still good. Exactly the same rating. And he's route running downfield with 69, 69. All right, let's see what happens to him as a player. 69, 69 plays. 76 and 70. So he looked, as he became, pretty good. He's going to get loads and loads of yards. This guy is going to be a playoff team, a wide receiver, as long as the rest of the GM work is good. But you know, that's. Let's have a look at the other guy. Let's come back to Terry. Terry, low percentage developed, year younger, similarly good, not quite as across the board. That's the wrong person. I'm looking at completely the wrong person. We actually need Fierro. Sorry, Fierro, 36, while being younger, is good. These combines are fantastic. Disregard broad jumps because it's returning kicks, doesn't matter, which actually tells you something about his projected current ratings. It's no credit in it for returning. So it's not as far from the 81 here as it looks. Fierro looks like a good prospect as well. I think they're more similar than you might immediately think when you look at this. And if anything, when I looked at this before, let's see if it still feels the same now, I thought that Fierro might be the better pick in this draft, although they're both good. I don't think you can go wrong with either of these guys. Here we go. So I'm just controlling for the static here in my similarity score work. They're outrunning and downfield the same, high 60s. All right, so look, they're similar. They're very similar. These guys that come out don't look as elite immediately because you can see the 59, 54, 63. But on the delta thing here, plus 10, plus 3, minus 1, minus 5, minus 8. There is there's a bust which you didn't get on the other guy. Let's see if there's any similarities between this guy Harris. Harris had a low, not really. And there's a non-elite combine. I don't think he's that close a comp. Look, they're both very good comps. Fierro and Segura. What I think I would do if I was a rebuilding team, because he's a year younger and because he's more developed, I would probably take Fierro over Segura. I definitely only limit my thinking to those two picks with this, and whoever's picking third, we'll come to that in a minute, should pick the other one. That's my view. So I'm going to go Fierro with 2 for Cincinnati. And then now we've got Green Bay on the board. It says they need a quarterback. Don't care because the other quarterback on the board good, but he's not good enough to be picked here, I think. So I'm going to go for Segura. And that gets me through the first 3 picks of the draft. Now we've got to Carolina. They need, according to this, O-line, an outside linebacker and a safety. So here we are with the elite prospects left in this draft. According to me, there are other position groups too, though. So let's come out and look at those. And I think a couple of things at this point. One is if there's an elite wide receiver on the board and you're a team that's rebuilding, picking high in the draft, I think you should probably take them. But I recognise that not everyone's going to say that, but that is my view. In this draft, and we can look at it in a minute, there are lots and lots of elite defensive back prospects. There's this guy Espinal, there's this guy Weidman, there's this guy Vaughn, who's a safety, Burns, cornerback, Stool, cornerback. They're all elite. So that's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? There are 5 elite prospects at least, and there are other good ones too. These ones have all got middling grades, but they're all still pretty good. So the debate for Carolina now is, do they take a wide receiver or do they take a cornerback or a safety? I think if it were me, I would take the wide receiver. That's my view, but I'm not sure what Carolina's view will be. Let's see. I think at this point, however, you do have to look at what the positional value against the needs. I have no real clue how much to weight these needs. I will have a quick look at Huffman to remind me how much I liked him as a wide receiver, because what I'm basically looking at here is whether we take Huffman, who is a good prospect but he's not super elite, and compare it against a bunch of defensive back prospects who do look super elite. Huffman's got middling combines only, really, but there are reasons to like, and he's got middling big play, so that's not amazing, but he has got the high bars elsewhere. I mean, it's, this isn't something that conventional in the front office football world. I wouldn't expect to see many GMs do this, but the ones who do this, I do think have consistent high performance. So I think there's a few things to think about there. He's got endurance, which is important. I better just check actually. There's other 2 that I just already picked have got endurance. Sorry, let me just do that because I didn't check that. Yes, and yes, that's fine. All right, so Huffman. All right, so there's a real chance that he's only a 50s or low 60s wide receiver. I still think that's really valuable, but I'd probably, if I had a need in the secondary, I'm not sure I'd be picking Huffman immediately. What I think I might do is take some of these clearly elite prospects off the board from on the defensive back side, which I think is a valuable position. I'd probably rate it slightly higher than others, but I don't really know whether to value that or not. I don't know, for example, whether good teams are more likely to have good defensive backs on them. They might be, or it might just be neutral. There are some positions where good teams clearly don't have those kind of players, but anyway, don't know about this one. So let's have a look at Vaughan. Let's try and honour the team needs for a minute. So Vaughan is an elite safety prospect, I think. But I think I'd rather have the cornerback. Actually, I think he's more like a corner than a safety anyway. Yeah, I mean, this guy's super elite. His position too, he's not that young. I'd probably take, and then you've got Espinal, which the only knock on him is he's got low weight, but I don't know how much to look at that. He's got everything. I mean, 50% developed for a young player. He's got a max static, although there is a bit of a debate around the importance of the static of that position. This guy's going to be crazy elite. All right, I'm gonna pick Espinal here, just because he's clearly such an elite player. Now we bring to the Indianapolis. It says there needs a end, centre, and quarterback. Don't know how real that is, but I think with the quarterback on the board not really being good enough to take at this point, I view him as very much a sort of low first, and low first is on a very kind of generous basis. I mean, he's down here. Ed Brady, he's got 1% developed, and he's expected to grade out in the 40s. I don't think many people are going to share my view that he's a first-round quarterback anyway, let alone the 5th pick of the draft. So I'm going to keep taking some of these guys. I'm probably going to take here another one of these defensive backs, I think. I like the safety, but I'd rather have the corner than the safety. Actually, no, this guy converts to corner anyway, doesn't he? Let's just have a look at his... maybe it's him, or maybe this guy Weidman. Weidman again, another 50% developed with a really young age. I really like players like that, because if you're picking early in the draft, you're probably rebuilding, and these really young players, you can just have them for years and years, and the cohesion they give you down the track. All right, I'm going to go with Weidman here. That's a nice solid pick. All right, Oakland needs a running back, a linebacker, and a safety. Don't take a running back with a 6th pick in the draft, doesn't matter how good they are. We're going to go with this safety here. Vaughan, quite like him. Right, San Francisco, is that Saw? Now hello Saw, he loves running backs. He just took the top one off the board in the red zone blitz that I was just in. You could go with this guy Lieber, who's a top running back, but let's just look at him, Lieber. Lieber is 206, and I think he's got high route running, and he's very young. There's his route running, 83. And he's got a good combine, 85 out of 100 for the dash. I think Labour probably converts to receiver. So I think you're looking at Labour, and I think you're looking... he looks great as a running back. I mean, his whole rec, I think, was like, is it max? It's max, or it's close to max. He's got the statics, which is breakaway speed, power inside, and speed to the outside. He's got all those, and he's got the endurance too. Has he got endurance too? Yeah, so Labour's a great running back prospect, but I would urge you not to take one with the 7th pick in the draft. I would consider him as a wide receiver prospect though, and I would still look at this guy Huffman. I think I'm going to say Huffman here, and then for Buffalo picking next, I'm going to say Labour as a wide receiver conversion. So those are pick 7 and 8. Now we're into Tennessee. Tennessee sees linebacker, tackle, and wide receiver, and he's a bit disappointed. They need a receiver, and they couldn't get one here, but they look down the board, and here is Devontae Ogden. Devontae Ogden is a weird prospect, but I still think you'd pick him, and I'll show you why I think he's weird. So he's got a weird combine that doesn't fit with the others. It's this one, it's the agility combine, and if you control, let's just look to see what that does. So if we go across to his bars, you can see the big plays there. It's a max, perfect. We like max, particularly on wide receivers. The endurance is right on the border of 40, which for me is a kind of minimum acceptable. So that, depends how good the scouting is and stuff like that, but that's hovering around the border of acceptable. Now, I don't do game planning when I play this game, which makes me super unusual. Pretty much everyone who plays this game a lot, who might find themselves watching this, will know about game planning. I find it really boring, so when I play the game, I just hit Rex and I don't do the game planning. That makes me super unusual. And therefore I'm probably not the person to speak to about this. But if I'm picking a player with low endurance, it's kind of game over because Rex won't put them on the field for snaps if they're a low endurance player. You're probably going to find a different approach if you do game planning. You can probably control it better than I can. This guy's got an unusual agility, is low, it doesn't fit, well, it's not unusual, just an outlier versus the others. It means getting downfield's low, which it is. If you then just make all the players that look a bit like this guy, but has got the same or worse combine, there it is, you start introducing the prospect, even with the high big play, let's introduce that as well, of it. It's kind of unusual for players to be this good, but they do exist. This one's an example, and this one, I bet you when we scroll across, he's going to have low getting downfield, which is, no, it's not as low, 62, whereas our guy's 46. And the route running was pretty good. And what happened is he's 60 and 80 for route running, and 60 and 80 turned into 28 and 80. So the downfield, his bar was a fake, and it turned out to be low. And if you look at all these actuals, these are all actual players. The downfield was low. They're all low because this combine's low, and that's what it's trying to tell you. But the route running is all right. I mean, it kind of goes all over the place, but it can be all right. This guy's probably a usable wide receiver. He probably is questionable. He's really questionable, actually, and there are other ones in this draft. I'm probably overdrafting him here, but it's telling me that this team needs a receiver. And if you need a receiver, you should pick a receiver. I think the game is pretty much as simple as that. So we've got him as the 9th pick. Tennessee comes on, they need a linebacker, a fullback. I bet they don't. Picking 10th in the draft, they probably need other positions more than they need linebacker and fullback. But it says tackle, and the next guy here on my board, anyway, Kendall Quinn is a tackle. So let's have a look at him. And we're going to put his numbers into here. All right. Yeah, okay, so he's a tackle. He looks like he's going to be good. The probability of him being bad is low because all these guys are fairly good, or better than fairly good. Even with his static and stuff, he's going to be fine. He's got a board. The only problem with him is his solid assessment score, which is this one, is 45. Higher that is, the fewer penalties you get. You really want for an elite offensive lineman for that to be quite a bit higher. This guy's going to have better ratings than performance, and it's going to be because of penalties. But having said that, he's still going to be good, and he's going to be a good run blocker and stuff like that. So let's put him as 10. Then we got to Tampa Bay. They need a tackle, a linebacker, and a quarterback. The quarterback one's interesting because, you know, when does someone take my guy Brady? Good name for quarterback, by the way, for obvious reasons. I don't imagine someone picks him with the 11th pick in the draft, even though we've kind of got him as an outside chance being a decent quarterback. In which case, we'll just go back to best player. I've got 2 players I rate the same. They're cornerbacks. One's called Burns, one's called Stool. They're the same age. Stool is more developed than Burns. Burns has got better combines than Stool. So kind of take your pick. Let's go with Stool because he's the better developed. So let's put him in first because you think, well, if he's better developed, then his probability of busting is lower, which is an important thing to look for. All the players that look like him are pretty good. What are his bars like? You have got, all these coverage bars are fine. Has he got an interception bar? He's got a max one. He's got max endurance. Okay, I'd just take Stool. We'll look at the other guy in a minute, but I'd take him. Let's look at Burns because best player available. The next position needs are still kind of lower value positions. Query whether you'd rather than an O-line or a cornerback, but there isn't a lot of O-line in this draft. I can just get that out there. Now, we're not going to find a lot of O-line at the top of the draft here, but there's loads of defense backs. This guy's bars are worse. His comps are about the same. He can go next. So there's Burns. So Burns goes to Jacksonville, pick 12. That now brings Cleveland onto the clock. Tampa Bay was Garion. Hey, Garion, what's going on? Cleveland comes onto the clock, and it says they need a quarterback, a linebacker, a safety. Well, there aren't that many of those, although here's this guy Young is a cornerback, so if you need a safety, then maybe just bolster your secondary elsewhere. I like these guys slightly more, Price and Bates. Price is, although it says he's an end, he's really an elite tackle, and then you've got a defensive tackle. Then you've got this guy Bates as well as a defensive end with rush. So, you know, in the defense, I should stop for a second. You'll see that in my gradings at least, you're not going to find many linebackers high on my board because I think that you're looking for the passing game in the first round. So on defense, I want players that can rush or coverage. That's all I'm looking for. rush or coverage. If players don't have rush or coverage capability, I don't want them. And the same really on the offensive side of the ball. They need to be able to throw, give someone time to throw or catch. That's what they need to be able to do to be a first round pick in my world. This is the next two players I like though. We've got Price and Bates. I think we're going to say, let's look at, I think we probably wait for a team that's got a need in these positions. These players, there's a lot of much for muchness on my grades here, 1.4 to 1.5, got loads of them. And this guy, Fultz, I think converts to receiver as well. He's a bit older, but he's very well developed. He's got the high dash. Has he got the route running? Yeah, and has he got the high endurance? Sort of, it's enough. I'm going to say, even though it doesn't fit with the position needs at all, that we're going to go best player available, and accounting for positional value, I'm going to go for this guy, Fultz, as a conversion to wide receiver, bringing Baltimore onto the... Now, Baltimore, these guys in the defensive front corner of this. So let's look between Price and Bates. Price, although it says he's an end, he's a defensive tackle. At least he is if he played 4-3. He's got a massive projected bars. You have to be a bit careful with these expensive guys at defensive tackles because they start using your cap up for no reason. But he's got the high bars for rushing and for run defense. And he's got the high endurance, and he's got enough static here, 64, to cause you to feel like they're probably believable bars, or at least it'll be close enough. And if you look at that, here's a bunch of comparable players. There's one with a 70s projection, turned out in the 80s. This one turned out 57, so there is downside risk too, but the chances are this is going to be at least a 60-plus player who can convert to D-tackle. You can use him at end, I guess, particularly if you play 3-4. His developed percentage isn't great. So we're in the mid-round pick now, as opposed to top elite. These aren't top positions, and they're not top prospects, but still Price is good, and he's going to very solid mid-round. I mean, for the 14th pick, that's a good pick. Now we bring Detroit, who according to this they need a D-tackle. Now Detroit is Ben, so it's really not my job to tell Ben how to do drafting. If you're watching this, Ben, I'm doing everything I can to copy how good you are at this game, and as you can see, I am nowhere close. And let's see where you would be looking at the board if this was the board you were looking at. I don't think you'd care that much about the positional value. And maybe you would look at these guys. Let's see, we've got Bates, Young, and Lyle. Let's pick between these guys, because then I get a bit of a cliff here. I get lower grades down here. So let's look at these three and see how we're going to pick them and in what order. Here's Bates, 4-3-3-6-4. All right. Okay, so Bates, again, prospects like him, -10 happens, which would be high 50s instead of 60s, but that's right. Middling combines only, so that's not great. And then what have we got? So if we go across here, we got decent endurance, and then we got a max PR strength here, which is always promising, and then we got a max PR tech here, which is it's not max actually, but it's close enough. So between 69 and 84. So if you take players like that, they tend to be good, and they tend to be, I'd imagine, pretty dominant at rushing, which is this. No hundreds though, but they're going to be 70s and 80s. Yeah, right. Not sure. I'd rather have 100 and not much else. So that's Bates. Then we've got Young, who let's do Lyle because he's the same position. 4-3-3-2-7. So Lyle's the same position, better combines, higher projection. Why have I got him ranked low? He's probably got a lower rush bar. I know it's still max, but we've got lower static and a bit lower endurance. Okay, so let's go with this guy. So if we say see the static between the sort of -10 +5, and then if we do the projected technique is greater than 72, so this player's at the max. See what we get. There's a bust in the sample in the small group, but there's another one, but that's not comparable. All right, they're all a bit unusual, but there's the high PR tech, and then does it come through to? Yeah, this guy's that's still not super. They've all got high dash, which is important because rushing. Not many comps that have got combines as good. This guy's probably pretty good actually. I think Lyle. And he's young and a 17%. What have I done wrong there? I've done something wrong. Let's check. Oh, it's not higher on him. Oh, the 50 and the, yeah, okay. Don't know, that's not great statics either. This guy Young, let's look at Young. So he's cornerback, he's got really high development and a young age as well. So let's look at Young. He's the third one to look at. I'll probably take Lyle over the other defensive end I just looked at, not by much. Here's Young. There's this single bust there, but another bunch of good players. What does Young's bars look like? He has got good coverage bars. He has got middling interception bar. Better than, okay, I'd probably take, from this lot, I'd probably take Young. So I'm going to put Young here, 15. Then that brings New York onto the board. They need a receiver. Oh dear, there aren't that many left now. And the ones that we've got on the board, I've still got 3, but they're down the draft prospects. Having said that, there was nothing about these, and these are not going to be dominant, amazing ends. They're just going to be pretty good. So at this point, I'm probably looking a little bit more at the positions and following the needs. And if this is a team that wants a receiver, then there's no harm at all in having to go at a receiver with a first-round pick at all. These are still decent valued attempts. So you've got Jordan, who's a receiver who's got low development and no static, question mark. You've got Underhill, low development, but he's young, and a high static, so that's interesting. And then Anderson, he's got decent development, and he's got a high static too. So I've put these 3 as guys to look at. Underhill and Anderson have got lower, they're probably going to have lower projections. They might not rate in the 60s, they might rate in the 50s, but they're still likely to be high in the bars that I think are important. Let's have a look at these guys. Let's start with Jordan, the guy with the low static. See which one of these I would take. So this guy has got low dash, which is consistent with low static. He's kind of slow, and that's not really what you want. But it's not always the end of the world, and let's just check if that's right. So if we go and look at players who are also slow, he's got 60s for route running and getting downfield. That's not great. No, actually, do you know what? I'm not sure why I gave this guy a first round grade at all. Why did I do that? No, I do not know. No, okay, I don't know what I was playing at there. That's not a first round grade at all. We're going to make him a second round grade. So it's not him, he's going to get taken now. Underhill, let's go with Underhill. So this guy, low bench, which is weird. Quite good comps. He's got, these bars are okay only, but he's got the high static here, which is good. And you do get, okay, he's not going to be amazing either. He's going to be all right. He's got endurance though. Let's find players. Is there players similar, really similar? No, this is kind of unusual shape of player. What about this one? Nope. Don't know. Still worth a punt though for Underhill, so we're going to look at him. And then this other guy, Anderson, he had slightly higher developed, which is good when you're picking players that are a bit odd and you don't know what to make of them, which is kind of where we are with some of these guys. Combines again, not great. Kind of reaching a bit for wide receivers, but there's nothing wrong with doing that, in my view. A lot of moderate players here, pretty average, really. Here's players, this guy, here's one, okay, here's a comparable player. So Anderson has got a projector 56, he's got nuts and bolts combines, nothing fantastic. This guy Rudy at a 58, looked about the same, ended up 37. Downfield of 56, 66, 56, 66 turned into 32, 22. Right, these guys are down the draft. That's down the draft prospect, really. Although I quite like this guy Underhill, so I'm going to put him at 16. Next one, Philadelphia. This is Johnny. Hey, Johnny. How's it going? Let's keep going. We're going to do, apparently, an end. Maybe there's that quarterback, Johnny, but I think Lyle, the end we looked at, is your guy in this draft. Next one, Atlanta needs a tackle, quarterback, or a safety. At some point, we're almost getting into the world where someone picks this quarterback. And there's not a tackle left, I think. Oh, there is. There's this one, Cobb, and then this one, Hoke. Cobb has got a really high racing. He is a fairly young prospect. I don't know what to think about low seismic scores on defensive tackles. Some people don't like it for the same reasons the O-line. I'm yet to be completely convinced, but I haven't really looked at it. Yeah, okay, this guy's going to be good. He's got a high racing. He's got high enough endurance. He's got, you can rush to. I don't think that it's a position where you want to allocate a lot of cap, but yeah, this guy's good. Cobb, so I'll put Cobb at 18. Minnesota, they need a tackle too. They just missed one. Well, why don't they pick this one? Why not? Because I like this guy Bates quite a lot more. So let's put Bates. Oops. Because he plays a more interesting position, which is end. Pittsburgh, they need a linebacker, a fullback, and an end. They've just missed an end, but there's this one called Brink. Let's put Brink up on here. So Brink's got a pretty high projection, 272. And my comps have gone a bit funny because I think he's a tackle. No, he's not. There we are. And the comps are all okay. And his combines are good. And why don't I like him more? He's got a decent PR total. It's because he's got 50 for strength, which is all right, but it's not great. Endurance 80. Let's control for this. Leave guys in who are sort of similar on static and see if they look like they're good players. Yeah, they look all right. He'd probably be in his 60s end with pretty good rushing, not going to shoot the lights out. But that's that for Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh's Rob. There you go, Rob. That's for you, Rob. Brink. 21st pick, Miami. They need a receiver. Who doesn't? And then tackle and linebacker. Why don't they go and make a dart at this guy? Oh, actually, there's a reason why. Because the next best guy on the board, according to me, is Hoke, who's a tackle. And maybe Hoke is a player they want. Don't know anything about the rosters here. I haven't really taken time to look. If they've got a receiver already, they'll probably go somewhere else perhaps. Right, tackle, 71 projection. Maybe he turns out a 60s player, something like that. He's got rushing. That's always promising. He's got strength and he's got endurance. So that's good. I probably would have liked him about as much as the last guy I just looked at. You get a few busts here in the similar players, so be a bit careful. Maybe that's why I grade them a bit lower, but he still looks right. There's Geno Hoke. Next one, New Jersey coming onto the board. They need linebackers. The best linebacker on the board is a sort of non-rush, non-coverage linebacker is this guy, 240 pounds, Kenny McElroy. So there's him. Dallas, he needs a linebacker too, and a quarterback and a tackle. Well, there's no tackles in this draft really that are that good. There's this guy Hammond, who I think is an prospect. And then we got the quarterback that I talked about, this guy, Brady. So let's use this place to use Brady. Let's go and look at him again at least. So this guy, his bars are not going to knock anyone out. They're not that good. But there is enough of a sense rush bar there to look at from memory. His sense rush bar is 44 for me. 40 is a kind of low for some of these bars and some of these places. A bit of data driving that viewpoint, not massively. And the comps look bad, but the reason the comps look bad is because the comps were not good enough prospects to see the field, so you can't really tell. Here's one who did see the field and popped, and I wouldn't be, and this one was about as good as you'd expect him to be. I think Brady, if he had the chance, he's got enough accuracy, he'll be a high 40s quarterback or something with enough bars to be fairly interesting, and if he didn't throw interceptions, he might be quite good. So that's my view on Brady. We'll have him as 20. He's got a 1%. So maybe one better stashed by a good team to sort of put on the bench. Okay, yeah, that's what happens when you use your phone as your microphone and someone phones you in the middle of trying to do this. Right, so moving on. We have got now Detroit. Detroit is Ben. Now, here's a pick. This is a pick that I think Ben might consider doing. Maybe not in the first round, but let's look at this guy here. Eddie Bryant. He's a fullback. He's got a good projection. He's got a nice high development. And I think he's probably a decent candidate for conversion to tight end. So let's have a look at Bryant. He's got high combines. I have not really spent I've not really spent any time thinking about conversions, but when you're looking at conversions, you need to look at the weight. So 257, that's a tight end's kind of weight. You need to look and see whether there's good combines, across the board, that might help them survive conversion. And then is there high right running? It's max. Is there a high static somewhere? It's max. That one's not max. Is there endurance? It's max. Okay, that's a slightly quirky one, but maybe you could pick him and make him a tight end, so let's do that. Next one, Los Angeles needs end, cornerback or safety. There's a cornerback right here called Cass. Let's have a look at Cass. All right, so Cass looks good on the comps thing. It looks like he's got decent bars here. He's got a 0 bar. I think that's a 0 bar or close to it. That's not good. And this is only average, and his statics only average. So he's not going to be a surefire thing by any stretch. We're getting into the lower first round picks here. The value's starting to thin out, but I still think that's a decent enough pick, I think. San Diego, they had the first round pick. They managed to get a big time quarterback. They should probably, if they're rebuilding, they should throw at the wall and attempt to get a receiver. Here's this guy, Anderson, who we looked at before, who looked like a high variance pick, but at a really important position. Why wouldn't you do it if you had the first round pick and you're a rebuilding team? Next one, Chicago needs quarterback. If Brady hasn't gone here, look at Brady. And it says end as well. Is this guy? This guy is an end. I like this guy, Greenham. I'm not sure. I'm not totally sure. I think he's a first round pick. But he's a situation. He says linebacker, but he's not a linebacker really. He's a situational pass rusher, I think. He's young with a high development, 33 development on a young, or 33% developed on a really young prospect. He's got a weird combine. Don't know if that's a problem. Could be, but he's got the max tech and he's got decent strength. So I think this guy's and he's got no endurance. So he's got 35 endurance. I think this guy's a kind of situational rusher. Interesting player. Will make a really good second round pick. Could make a pretty good lower first round pick. And conversion to end looks like a real possibility to me, which is a more valuable position outside linebacker if you play the 4-3 like I tend to. Right, New England, this is Wes. Needs defensive front and a quarterback. Don't forget Brady, if he still hasn't gone by this point. I think he's really good value with a 28th pick. I really do think he could be a quarterback in front office football. There's a linebacker here. We're starting to get thin. There's a safety, there's a tackle, there's a receiver, and then I don't know what else. I don't know. Maybe you just take that receiver just because you're starting to run out of ideas. New Orleans, and that was Wes, by the way. Hello, Wes. New Orleans needs defensive front or a fullback. I'm pretty sure its biggest need isn't a fullback, even if you're picking 29th in the draft. Let's just go best player. Best player is this guy, Hitchcock. There we go. Denver needs tackle. Now we're getting to the teams that don't really have any needs. I thought they have these kind of needs. We got Muller and Hammond here as my remaining 2 first-round grades. And then we've got others. So Muller was weird because he looked quite good. He's got good combines, not got great statics, but he's got really good percentage developed to age. That looks all great. But when you run him through this comps thing, even though his bars, actually, that's not him, hang on. Even though his bars look fine, so if you look at his bars, they all look fine. Punishing hits is lowish, but everything else looks all right. But if you then look at these, which is the actual performance of a load of picks, this was their projection, the middle one. This was what it turned into for real when it became players, and this is the delta. And if you look in the first 4, you get three big busts, and I have no idea why. The others are okay. So I wouldn't pick him higher than this, but I would definitely pick him 30th. Arizona needs a running back, a fullback, and an inside linebacker. Well, those are all not very valuable positions, and I've got 1 grade left for this guy. Hammond is a tackle. So let's go with Hammond, unless I see a reason not to, and I'll look at him again. Okay, what's that? He's a pass blocking tackle. He's not got run blocking capability, which is why he's not higher. Again, he's probably the kind of player you'd feel really good about with a second round pick, but with a first round pick, he should be a 50s or low 60s rated tackle that has high pass blocking. and has got high solar-seismic. That's a valuable thing to have, 31st pick. And then Houston, who wanted a tackle and would have liked Hammond but didn't get him. Now they're just looking at the board and thinking, I don't know. So here's my second round grades. And let's do this by just biggest projection, biggest number. There's a linebacker called Ondra who's got a really high projection, not much of a static. A safety with a dodgy looking combine but really good bars called Muting. A linebacker called Becker that hasn't got a great static and is probably a defensive end. And then we're getting into the world of a barely good enough centre. Well, that's a young player at least. And just to round this thing out, and without going through all of these millions of players in the second round, this is the first round mock draft. Let's just do Atkins, actually, there's a wide receiver down there. What's the rest? Oh no, he's got a 50s projection. I think we're getting a bit over enthusiastic. Let's go with the centre, and there we are. So that concludes the draft. I have come up with this as the players that I have in this draft. I'll post it up now. I hope that was interesting. And if you've got any feedback, I'd love to hear it. And thank you for watching this if you've been watching it all the way through. Cheers. Bye.